Three, two, one, and we're live. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Village Made podcast. My name is Moveo Heimuli, and if this is your first time here with us, please consider subscribing in the link below. And also, if you're joining us again, thank you for coming back. But today, let's just get into this. Man, I'm excited. Today we have Afa Ah Loo, and man, I just appreciate the time that you set out for us, and just making the time to come out and talk story.
Yeah, of course. I love it.
But yeah, just getting into it. Tell us the story of your name, who named you, the meaning of your last name, and also maybe the villages that your parents come from.
Okay. So my name is actually Arthur. When my biological parents named me Arthur, and then when I was 3 months old, my biological parents had a divorce, and so my grandparents adopted me. And so my grandparents didn't even know how to speak English, let alone pronounce the name Arthur. So they just called me Afa, which is the Samoan translation of Arthur. So Afa has stuck with me the whole entire time. The only time I write down Arthur is when I'm doing legal stuff or, paying the bills and all that stuff. But I didn't even know that was my name until I was a sophomore in high school.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was my name, because then my parents took me to elementary school. They just took me as Afa, never Arthur. No one asked for a birth certificate. It's the islands.
Right.
People don't. They just go there and you're like, "What's your kid's name?" And say, it's Afa. And my grandparents even gave them my last name. I wasn't legally adopted, right? You know how Samoans and Polynesians are. You say you're adopted, but you're not really adopted. You just raise a child, so they're not dead. So my grandparents' last name is Folasa, which is a Samoan last name. So when they took me to school, they just said my name was Afa Folasa, but my birth certificate was Arthur Ah Loo. And also gave a different birthday. That's a whole different story. That's why I have two birth certificates, you guys. Anyway, but then when I was in a sophomore in high school, I wanted to be in a rugby team because, I'd realized that I loved fashion and I loved sewing. And so with it comes the misconception of who I was and my identity as being a straight male or being a fafa,
Right.
And so it was a hard time for me to really kind of fully appreciate that fashion was something that I love, and that's what God wants me to do. It's because every time I sew or people know that I sew, automatically they say, "Oh, that kid is
right.
gay, he sews, he does," just the island mindset. So I wanted to prove that I was not. So when I was a sophomore, I signed up for the rugby team because I want to just be like, I want to do something really masculine,
Man,
So in the rugby team, the coach said, "Well, you need to get your birth certificate because we need to figure out, just in case you're not overage or underage to be in the certain teams." So, okay. So I go home, ask my mom, and say, "Mom," when I say mom, it's my grandparents.
Right.
And "Mom, where's my birth certificate?" It's like, "Yeah, here's your birth certificate." Gives me the birth certificate. It says Arthur Ah Loo on it. And I'm like, "Mom, that's not my name.
Who's
I don't know
this
who
guy?
that." Yeah. I don't know who that is. Even the parents are my biological parents. And I was like, I don't know who I know the lady, and that's the lady that I've been calling Auntie this whole entire time. Or my sister, I guess. Since this is my biological mother's parents that I was adopted by. They're like, yeah, actually, you know what? Have a seat, have a sit, and just let me tell you a little story. Your name is actually not Afa, and your name is Arthur. Your last name is not Folasa. Your last name is Ah Loo, and I just had this whole entire meltdown and identity crisis or whatever you call it. I was like, I don't know who the hell I am anymore. I don't know. I didn't even know that was my real name. It was just a lot at one time. And when my biological siblings would come over, I always made fun of their last name because I was so proud to be Samoan and to have a last name full of Sa. I was from the village of Falilima, and everybody in Samoan knows the village of Falilima. So to have that last name and where the village that last name came from, I was very proud of it. I told everybody where I'm from. I told everybody who my dad was. But to know that all of a sudden my name, that is not my name.
Right.
It was just very devastating for me. So it took me a very long time to kind of just figured, okay, well, I guess this is my name. Just stick with it. So that's why when people ask me, what do you prefer? Do you prefer when you adopt kids? Do you tell them when they're older or tell them when they're younger? I was like, tell them when they're younger. You know, I feel like you tell them they're younger, you just they get used to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when they're older, it's just a brand new. You know, they've lived through all these experiences. I don't know. This is just how I experienced it. They've lived through all these experiences, and so therefore, it might as well just tell them up front, and they'll go from there. But yeah, so that's my name. That's how I figured out that was my real name.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. My last name is a Chinese last name. My last name is actually supposed to be just Loo. When Chinese people call each other, means Mr. or Mrs. Okay. So Mr. Loo or Mrs. Loo. So when the Chinese came to Samoa, my grandfather was actually from Tonga. He went to Tonga and then migrated to Samoa and married my grandmother. So that's where the last name Ah Loo from. That's why it's Ah Loo and not Loo. It just stuck with the Samoans when they hear other Chinese call each other Ah Loo, Mr. Loo or Mrs. Loo. So that's where my last name comes from. It's Chinese, not even Samoan. So now you can see the reason why I was just so frustrated, with just my name and feeling like I'm not Samoan because now my name is not even Samoan at all completely. My middle name is even English. So it was just an identity crisis for me, I guess, growing up and having to figure out that was my real name. But I grew up in the village of Lotopa. It's right next to Pesenga. But I also grew up in the village of Falima, which is where my last name is from, which is in the other island of Samoa, in Savai. But yeah, it was just Falima is a very rural. It's a very traditional Samoan way of living. But we moved out of Falima because my dad was disowned from his family and chased out of the village because of the church when he joined the LDS church.
Wow.
So we moved away from Falima and moved to Lotopa. And Lotopa is right next to the city, so it's a more urban area. And it's funny when you say urban, but when you go to Samoa, it's a village. You know what I mean? It's nothing urban about it. But when you go to the outskirts of Samoa, then you figure, oh yeah, that's pretty urban compared to what we're at right now. So that's where I grew up, the village of Lotopa and Falima. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know. I told you I talk a lot, you guys.
No worries. And so, what was childhood like for you, being raised in Lotopa?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was raised by my grandparents, and when I grew up, it was just me and them too. And then my uncle moved in with us. My uncle was just 3 years older than me, or 2 years older than me. So it was just us four. It was interesting because my grandparents were old, and so therefore they didn't have a full-time job. My mom had a full-time job when I was in year one. I don't know how they do it here in America. Is it what's the after kindergarten?
First grade, second
first grade. Yeah. So when I was in first grade until fifth grade, my mom had a full-time job working for this company that does slippers, that does the shoes. So every day after school, my dad would pick me up and take me to the my mom's work, and so she would just do the slippers and throw it down to me, and I would pack it in the bags where you sell them in Samoa. But it was just one of those things where you just had to grow up really fast. And since my grandparents were the most physically abled people, I grew up selling fruits and vegetables in the streets, And I remember in so many, a lot of times, my dad rented a little stall at the flea market, when I was then in middle school. And so after school, every time I would go to the market, take off my school uniform, eat like a loaf of bread, and then put on my like normal clothes, and just go out and walk around the markets next to the buses and say, hey, you want pumpkins or whatever it is I was selling. But I remember, it was at that time, I was very embarrassed by it. When I see my friends coming to the school
Right.
station to go catch the other buses to go back home, I would just hide, and every time my dad's like, "Hey, go sell these pumpkins." Like, no, I don't want to do it. Like, all my other friends are not doing it. None of them are doing it. Their parents have full-time jobs. Why do I have to do it? So it was really hard growing up in that situation. But it was something that I now, thinking back on it, I value a lot because it really has taught me the value of hardworking and just going for what you want. Because I feel like if I grew up in any other way, I wouldn't have learned that lesson, at least for me.
Right.
So yeah, it was just a constant, and working, going to school, and then come home, and then selling fruits, and then at nighttime, my uncle and I would go to like the wharf and like fish for food, you know what I mean? And then we would come home at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's just the same cycle over and over again for years and years and years. And thinking back on it, it was just normal for me. That was just the way that I grew up,
Yeah.
and now telling the story, I always tell people I'm not telling the story for a pity party. You know what I mean? I'm just telling the story because that's how it happened for me.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And I'm grateful it happened. Back then, I didn't realize it was a lesson learned for me to be able to pave the way that I am going to be in the future, and how hard work is going to pay off if, by putting my back into it. So yeah, it was just the way that it was for me. It was hard back then, but now I appreciate it even more right now.
Man, sounds like a lot of those the attributes that you learn when you're young,
Yeah.
has with who you are today,
Yeah.
those they translate over to who you are today.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about just your childhood, just going through all of that. Could you see a different, I guess, like, not so much better, but like, could you see a different future for you? Or could you see yourself doing that? You know what I mean? Did you think it was for the rest of your life that you were going to do that? Or
Back
did
then?
you, yeah. Or did you think like, man, there's something better, or there's something more for me to do?
Well, for me, I always had aspirations.
Yeah.
I remember every time a plane would fly over our house, I always asked my mom, "Mom, when are we gonna ride a plane?" That was always the question to my mom. My mom's answer was, "When you are smart in school, that would be your first airplane ride." And she was so right. My very first airplane ride was to BYU Hawaii. And when I got onto that plane, I sobbed because I knew that every time she said that, I was like, okay, she's just answering that because she's a mother and she's poor and she won't be able to buy me a ticket to go on an airplane to go to New Zealand like every other friends that I see. You know what I mean? And so when I realized that was, again, a lesson that my mom had taught me, it's like, dang, this woman is so smart. And that's when I realized my mother knew me more than I did. But to answer your question, I had aspirations. I had different, like, growing up in Samoa, I was like, I want to be a banker. I want to be something else. You know what I mean? But did I think it was going to happen? I don't know. I don't think so. I just knew that was my normal, and I was okay with it. I knew it was hard. I knew that it was hard, waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to seminary. And then my day starts, from 6 o'clock until like 2 o'clock in the morning. And
come back from fishing.
Yes, come back from fishing.
Dang.
And it was just a constant cycle. I knew that was hard, but for me at that point, I was just immune to it. Yeah. It was fine by me, and it was fun. In some cases, it was fun in a way that I was out, like I said before we started this conversation. I'm very extroverted. I love to talk to people. I think that's why Vera, my daughter, gets it from, because my wife is very, very quiet. But I just love talking to people. So even though I was embarrassed to go out and sell fruits and like fish for food and all that stuff, it was fun for me to just get out and be creative and do things and like hustle. Yep. It's funny because I always, after my mission, I told this story to my mom because my dad died when I was on my mission. And so when I went back, I was like, man, I have so much what's the word when you confessing to do to my mom when I go back home of some of the stuff that I did when I was young, and they never knew about it. And I was like, when I go back home after my mission, I'm gonna be truthful. I'm gonna tell them everything that's going on. So when I went back home, I was like, Mom, so I gotta tell you something. When I used to go and sell those fruits, and fruits and vegetables on the streets, it's like, yeah, when Dad tells me, okay, this pumpkin is $5, I will go and tell people it's $5.50, and I will keep the 50 cents and give you the $5. It's always been like that. So she's like, oh my gosh, you little stinker. I was like, but I was a hustler and it paid me. So it's funny now thinking about it. But like I said, it was, I didn't think that there was something better. I just didn't know better.
Right.
It was just my normal for me. And so therefore, I just had to work with it. And for me, I knew that if I do certain things, it will get me somewhere. But that somewhere, I didn't know how it was going to be. So to go to school and to be able to get accepted to BYU Hawaii, they come to BYU Hawaii and be around people of many cultures and from all over the world, that really opened my eyes and like how the world was. You can watch so much movie on TV in Samoa and think that that's how it is in the real world, but to be able to get out of Samoa and do something different, it was an eye-opening for me. And I guess that's where it really started for me, to be able to be like, there is a world out there. Yeah. I'm okay with it, and it's just time for me to get out and do something about it.
Can you talk about the education? Because every time you ask your mom, like, oh, when can I get on the plane? Mm-hmm. And she told you, oh, when you're education, or when you're good at education. And can you talk about that period, or like when you knew that, oh, maybe education is going to be that way that I get out? And like, when did that start? Was it like early on, maybe like a freshman, or was it like your senior year? And then that process for you to like, wow, I actually got accepted. And right. You know what I mean? Talking about just like knowing that you're going to be able to leave the island.
Right. Well, I've always been good at school. I've always been really good at school. So, and in Samoa, I don't know if anyone that knows how Samoans are with end of the year and end of semester, they call it prize givings, where they would gather all the whole entire school and have different prizes for like different classes and different subjects for first place, second place, third place, and they have like trophies, and then you will call your name out, and the kid will come out and the parents would come out to give them leis. It's like a big celebration. Growing up, seeing that, if that didn't like
motivate you,
the fire to be like, I want to be one of those kids to get up there. You know what I mean? I don't know what would, because I remember seeing that for the first time, and I'm like, that's actually really nice. Get up there and have your parents come and hug you and give you like all these leis with candies on, and you go home and eat all the candies, and get all these certificates. You can put in your like folder that has clear pockets, so you can like brag to your whole entire family when they come over from family night, So I knew then, just by seeing that, the value of it all. I might have not seen the real value. I might have just seen it as bragging rights.
Right, just a way to get
right, just to get
candy or get
or to get on my mom and dad's good side. But I knew just the value of it, period. So it was something that even when I asked my mom those questions, I already knew that was going to be the way to do it, and that there was no other way, even though I hated school. I mean, that's why I failed epically at BYU Hawaii, because I just hated school. And when I got to BYU Hawaii, I was like, freedom,
right?
And so it was just, it's like, great, this is how it is. I'm going to go to the beach and don't go to school. And it was just, I knew what would be the potential of good things that came from going to school. I didn't realize the longevity of how it was going to affect my entire life going forward. And just the school, just in Samoa, that's just how it is. You know what I mean? In the islands, is the smarter your child, and however many times your child gets up to get a certificate from the front, your child is a golden child, And so when I grew up, I was the only child, so I was definitely the golden child growing up, in that sense. And so, so it was just really great to be able to do that, and to see the importance of education, even though I didn't really know the true meaning of it. But yeah.
Man, that sounds like a lot of fun, though. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
No, yeah. But I thought that was cool that, if you're not fueled by that, seeing other kids, it's almost like a valedictorian, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of just the senior year, it's like every year, yeah.
Yeah, and like
that's cool.
There's so many times. Like I remember one time, my I knew it was prize giving, and I told my mom, "Mom, are you gonna get?" Because I didn't see her doing any lays at home. I was like, "Mom, are you gonna do any lays at home? Because prize giving is tomorrow." They're like, "Are you gonna get anything?" I was like, "Are you why are you questioning that?" It's like, well, I don't know, because I don't know if you're gonna get anything, because all I see is you just going outside and playing marbles with the kids and not doing your homework. I was like, okay, whatever. So she comes to the prize giving, and the first name they called me up is Arthur Ah Loo, and I looked back. I was like, I told you. So where's my lay? Nobody came out to get. So
wow.
it was just
embarrassing or no?
Yeah. I mean, and then I get called up again, and I turned to my mom. It's like, see, I told you, Mom, where's my lay? And so she bought a lay from one of my aunties and then come, nice. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was just, again, I didn't realize, I just didn't know that was the value. I just felt like, oh, it's a really great opportunity to get up and flex in front of the whole entire school and get candies and get all these certificates. I just didn't know that just because you study hard and you will help you get into BYU because of your grades. It was just, for me at that time, I was like, yeah, it's really good, time to get up there and say hi to your friends from up there. It's really great from where I am. So it was just, one of those things. But yeah.
And so when did your focus turn to BYU? And did you get any other offers or to go to school other places, like maybe New Zealand, Australia, or just BYU, Hawaii?
No, I was only BYU Hawaii. Okay. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I just wanted to go to a school that was within the church. So after I graduated from high school, I went to the NUS, the University of Samoa.
Okay.
Their preparatory year, UPY, they call it UPY, University Preparatory Year. And by that point, I had already sent in my application BYU Hawaii. So even when I was at NUS for UPY, I didn't even take that seriously, because I knew I already got it in the bag, that I was finally done with high school, and that I was gonna be at BYU Hawaii. I knew it even before I got the acceptance letter.
That's cool.
So even when I was in NUS, I passed my first semester and that was it. My mom's like, so where's your report card for your second semester? I was like, I don't know. They never gave it to us, but I never. Yes, I never. It was only BYU Hawaii for me, and I didn't even bother researching for anything else, because I knew that's where my uncle went for school. That's where all my friends went to school, and that's where something that was going to be something that I'm well familiar with. It was the islands. It's going to be a lot of brown kids over there, and I identify with that. And all my friends, my best friends, went over there, so it was really, it's just easy for me to be able to say, hey, I just want to go to BYU Hawaii and nowhere else.
Right. And then can you talk about being able to pay for school? How did that come about? Did you have to pay, or did you get scholarships, and then the acceptance letter, and then finding a plane ticket to Hawaii?
Right. So when I had an uncle his name is Joe Kyle, and he was a very rich man. He owned McDonald's. He owned a TV station in Samoa. He was the one that brought McDonald's to Samoa. He was filthy rich. So, and he was actually, when he served a mission in Samoa, and that's when my parents was disowned from the village of Falima, and they moved to the neighboring village called Falealupo. Uncle Joe stayed with my parents, and so my parents took care of him when he was on a mission. Anyways, he finished his mission, came to America, became a pilot, and went to the army, became a pilot, and he came back to Samoa, bought all this land, and went and that's how we ended up in Lotopa. He came and brought my family to Lotopa and say, this is all this land, you take care of it, you can live here. And even both of my parents passed, Uncle Joe paid for all the funerals and the food and their burial, paid for everything. So and he's since passed. I think it's been a year now. So when I went to BYU Hawaii, they wanted. I was in the iWest program. It's a scholarship thing for island kids. But one of the requirements is you have to bring like a bank statement of like your family's income. Your family income. So, growing up with my grandparents, they didn't have no bank accounts. You know what I mean? Right. The money they get is they put it under the mat.
The islands,
the
island bank.
Yeah. So there was no bank account. So I had no way of proving that we had some sort of income, even though it was just maybe like, I don't know, 10 tala a day or 10 tala a week. It was... So what we did was we asked Uncle Joe to bring his bank statement and have him be the sponsorship. Now, that was a really bad move because the way that BYU will determine how much you pay as a student is seeing with how much the bank statement will be. Well, I just told you Uncle Joe is really rich, right? So they see that was my bank statement, and man, I had to pay
full price.
Yes, so much money. So after my first semester, I had to go back to the admission office and say, hey, so actually, this is how much my parents actually makes. It's like, I don't know, $5,000 every month, $5,000 every 6 months. So I can't pay that much money every semester. Right. It was just, that's how it is. So that's how I got accepted to BYU Hawaii. Then they had to like redo the whole entire thing, and then I paid less. But yeah, that's how it was for me. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
And then what was that feeling like when you finally left Samoa? I know you kind of mentioned it earlier, like it was just sad, but you also know that you have an opportunity ahead of you. What was that feeling like?
I think the only sad thing for me was leaving my parents because I knew they were old. And that's the reason, the only reason why I always went back home. That's a really good reason. I feel like that was my main reason of keep going because my parents were old. Both my parents passed when they were 85. And so to be able to leave knowing that they are old and frail and not be able to take care of themselves was really heartbreaking for me. Luckily, my biological mother moved back with them, and so they took care of them. But it was still hard for me, even knowing that I took care of my parents all these years and now I had to leave. So for that, I was sad. I was sad to leave my parents. Everything else, I was like,
ready to move on.
Goodbye. Yeah. I'm going to live my life, and
my
even
best
when
life.
For real. But even though I was at BYU, you know how Samoans are, or I guess Polynesians. I don't know. I'm just speaking from Samoan point of view. They're like, you just, if you fail school, just stay here. You don't need to go back. I was like, no, I don't want to overstay. Ain't nobody got time to be like deported. Like, no one will find you. Well, it's okay. It's like, no. I just, I knew I would want to travel the world and still want to travel everywhere I wanted. But I was like, if I mess this thing up one time, it's going to affect my whole entire life. So as much as it sounded good to me back then to just stay and overstay, and just be under the radar for the rest of my life, I was like, no, and again, knowing that going back to my parents to take care of them, I was like, no, I have a life in Samoa, even though it wasn't much. I just had to go back, So yeah, it was sad for me, but it was very exciting to see how it was. Mostly exciting because now that I'm free from everywhere else, I don't have to save those damn fruits and vegetables,
Right.
I don't have to wake up every morning for church and be there an hour earlier, else my dad would not go to church. It was, my freedom at last. So yeah, that's how it was.
That's exciting, man. Well, the reason I ask about, just you coming over, coming to BYU Hawaii is usually I ask guests like their family migration story. Mm-hmm. And for you, you're the one moving from Samoa. Mm-hmm. That's so crazy. Yeah. And then your daughter is going to be the first generation here in the States,
Yeah.
And so now she gets to hear how you came over.
Oh my gosh.
And now this is good. This gets to be her story. Like, my dad.
Yeah, my dad. And failed epically at BYU Hawaii. Yeah, look at him now. Still failing. I'm just kidding.
No, but I just wanted to ask you, being born and raised raised in Samoa with the culture that the Samoan culture. Now, as a gatekeeper for your kid, what are some of the cultural aspects that you want to pass on? Maybe there's some things that you want to pass on, maybe some things you don't want to pass on. If you want to mention some things, would you like to mention or talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, growing up in the Samoan, since I grew up with my grandparents, it was a very Samoan way of living. And going to the high school that I went to, it was all English-speaking high school. You can't speak Samoan, or else you get a detention.
What high school is this?
It was LDS Church College.
Oh, okay.
Back then, it was Church College of Western Samoa, but they've changed it, LDS Church College Besanga, because they changed the name of Samoa from Western Samoa to Samoa.
Right.
But, it was hard. Even though I went to an all English-speaking high school, I never spoke English freely. Or, that wasn't my first choice ever. It was always Samoan. I only would speak English because I had to, or else I would get detention. So growing up in Samoa, it was hard. But I was a full-on fob. I mean, I still am. I don't know if you could see the struggle that I have trying to tell this story. But I'm proud of it. But yeah, it was hard, growing up like that. So just being able to be at home with my parents and my father, who was very staunch Samoan man, who knew a lot of stories and had a lot of knowledge about the Samoan. Even, in fact, a lot of professors from New Zealand and Australia would come to my dad when they write thesis papers and study about Samoan culture and things like that. Because my dad was that smart in the Samoan culture. In fact, he has a lot of recording from the church when the church comes over and they record him talking about the Samoan culture. That's how great he was. And so it was a lot of pressure it was a lot for me because knowing the traditional, like the fa'aloalo or the respectful way of speaking Samoan and the culture and the everyday Samoan was two completely different way of living and speaking. So it was hard for me to be at home to do that and then go to school and everyone else at school speaking English, or half caste or all of that. But it was hard. It was a lot of pressure, I guess. Seeing my dad being that well-spoken and well-versed and knowledged with the Samoan culture. I still don't know that much about the Samoan culture and traditions. So it was a lot of pressure for me. But there were some things that was taught to me and was done by my grandparents that I would never do to my kids. First of all, is beating me up until I almost died, for no apparent reason. Back then for me, there's a lot of things that I saw that my parents did, especially my dad, because my mom was the most loving woman that I ever known, that I'm not going to repeat to my child. Like I said, beating them up for no apparent reason. Like for example, if I trip over something like a cord, that would be a reason for me to beat me up.
Wow.
And it was just not like a slipper. It was anything you can find. Like it was just this thing. He will hold it and just like beat me up. Or like sometimes my biological mother would come. It was both of them beating me up. Like he would beat me up and then he would like be super tired and my biological mother would go at it. He would. And also being able to live within your means. That's the one thing that I always, even with my dad, and me and him would always like fight about, when we have fa'aloves or family functions and things like that, like a wedding or a funeral. The family's always like, okay, your family needs to give us 5,000 ta'ala. I was like, that's our whole entire yearly coming. Where are we going to get 5,000? So my dad, being the Samoan and he would go and borrow money from Uncle Joe or someone else to do that. For me growing up, I was like, that's not right. You know what I mean?
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense. Why? And then to be able to, like I said, disown from the family, and still to this day, we have never been accepted back to the family, even though we talked to that family, my dad's side of the family, but my dad died they call it died on the road. It's a metaphoric way of saying they were never accepted back or, accepted back from the family. They were disowned and never accepted back. So so for me, I was like, why are we wasting? Why are we giving? We can barely afford my school tuition. We can barely afford a sack of rice. Why are we giving money to them when the only time they would come to us is doing 511s or family stuff? Why? So living in America, and I know why. It's just it's, the Samoan culture is very family oriented. So whatever your parents say or whatever your family needs, whether it be right or horribly wrong, you still do it because they're your family and they're your blood. So, but for me, I was like, no, I'm not going to be forced into doing something like that, especially if I know that my family, my own personal immediate family is in need. I wouldn't, to me right now, I would be like, no, it's okay. You guys can do it without the 5,000 tala from our family. You're okay. You know what I mean? So when both of my parents died, since my dad was of high status in the Samoan culture or in our village, his family wanted this big Samoan funeral, like with all the fine mats and all this money. And we're like, well, where's the money coming from? You know what I mean? So both of my parents had a very, church like funeral where it was just, you come to the funeral, you get served plates of food, we go and bury them, and that was it. Mm-hmm. Nothing more to it. And my dad's family was very mad about that. They said, you know who this person is? Your father is blah, blah, blah. He needs to have a proper burial. It's like, no one's going to go to heaven with all that money and all that fine mat. Auntie, it's
right.
It's okay that he dies and that we only serve cake at his funeral and we only go home and bury him, put him straight in the hole and bury him. That it's okay. That's fine. So that way, after the funeral, no one is in debt. So it's the same. So some of those things one of those things that I know that I won't put that type of pressure on my kids.
Your kids, yeah.
It's just to be, again, the lesson that I said before is just living within your means, and not going beyond what and that's why even in fashion, people always think that I live this luxurious life and that I wear fur coats everywhere, you know what I mean? And a fox hat and whatever. No, if you see me, I literally live in sandals and shorts and that's how I am. My work is very high fashion, but that's just my work. The way that I live just within my means and I live like how I grew up, I never forget that. So to answer your questions, yes, those are some of the things that I grew up that taught me lessons of what to do and what not to do going forward and teaching my kids of what to do. Obviously, for me now with my daughter, I speak Samoan to her. She knows how to count an alphabet in Samoan and English. She speaks Samoan to her mom, and, super sassy sometimes. But that's, for me, that's more important than the other things that would bring burden to your family. For me to be able to teach my daughter how to speak Samoan and the culture that benefits everybody, but not just the system that is within the culture, not just the Matai High Chief title.
Right.
And saying that, I'm not saying that I don't respect them. I fully respect them. I just feel like our culture is to preserve everybody that's within it and help everybody that's within that culture and not just your parents and not just the one that has high chief titles, It needs to help everybody.
Yep. Man, that's crazy. I like that, how you incorporated everyone, and,
yeah.
With the sacrifices that your parents made, for you to move to America or, get an education to go to BYU Hawaii, with their sacrifices and the person that you are today, would you say that they'd be proud of the person that you are?
I hope so. I feel like they would be. My dad and I always would fight about certain things. He always say, well, you're the youngest of all my kids, but you talk back to me way too damn much. He always say that. And there's so many, I just grew up with a mouth, and I just when somebody doesn't sit right with me, I just say it, Like, for example, every Sunday he would say, Afa, let's go to the fish market to get some fish for me for dinner, for our church go high. I was like, well, our church, we believe that we don't buy on Sundays. And that starts a conversation of just like, you know what, you're a little piece of shit. Blah, blah, you know what I mean? Or like, if I go and pay for my lottery tickets, like, well, you know what, our religion, we're against, it was always like that for me. It was always the church above culture for me. And the church culture was always the culture for me. Even though being Samoan was something that I was very proud of, I felt like being able to bring the best of both cultures and put it into one would be the best way to go about it. So, yeah, it was just, I guess that's just how it was for me. It's just being able to see that and learn from it and just kind of, go with it and be like, okay, this is how it's going to be for me at least. And that's just how it's going to be for you. And it's okay if you live that way. It's okay if I live this way. Yeah. Just don't force your stuff on me and I won't force my stuff on you,
Man, that's a lot of experience, like the life experiences that you had with that. So
yeah,
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's just the first part, and now we turn to the second part, and just get into who you are today and what you're doing. And I just wanted to ask you this. I think I kind of mentioned it earlier. When, or at least for me, when I hear the name Afa Ah Loo, I hear fashion designer, you know? And for you, do you see yourself as just the fashion designer, or do you see yourself more than the fashion designer, I guess?
Yeah.
And does it whether it bothers you or offends you, or you know what I mean, when people just label you as the fashion designer, or do you be like, no, I'm a dad, or you know what I mean? More than just a fashion designer. Right. I don't know what your experiences are. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I'm more than a fashion designer. When I hear my name, I'm like, I was that kid that was running around in the islands without a shirt on, without, you know what I mean? For me, it always reminds me of that. And so it's still weird to me, to have people be like, oh my gosh, you're the Afa Ah Loo. Oh my God. To me, it's still like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like it still doesn't not sit well, but it still doesn't register in my mind that that's how people perceive me. Is that the word?
Perceive. Yep.
Perceive me. So it was just, for me, it always, like with my work and with my collection, I'm always inspired by where I'm from in Samoa. So when I hear my name, for me, it always reminds me of who I am and where I'm from, and to always constantly remind me of that. So even though I live here in America and I've had great success in my career, it's, for me, I see myself as just the island kid that never left the island, So it doesn't bother me at all when people are like, oh my gosh, all I see is fashion. That's fine, because I feel like if that's the one gift that God has given me, to be able to tell stories and to move people, then that's what I'll use. It's a God-given talent. So anything that is from God is good. And so to be able to use that as an instrument to tell my stories and to tell stories of other people and other cultures and just things that's happening in the world, it's much more bigger than me. It's much more bigger than you and me. It's just, there's a reason for it. And I feel like with living, there has to be a reason of why you do things and how you do things. And so that's what I always say when I get interviewed about fashion design. They're like, what's the most important thing about fashion? I always say, if your clothes doesn't move people, then what is it doing then? At the end of the day, that's what put values in your clothing more than money, and that's what's going to make people want to come back to you and want to learn from you and want to buy your clothes and your design, because when they wear it, it's not just a monetary value to them, it's a gift and it's a present they'll treasure forever. So at the end of the day, it's all about people and how you affect people. It's not about the design, it's not about the money. And that's why I will always and forever be inspired by not only the Samoan culture and the way of living and where I'm from, but also very inspired by women and how I see women, like, when they wear my clothes, they're different people, it just brings out the confidence that's already in them. They just forgot about it or didn't know that it was there. So yeah, that's For me, I'm just more of a fashion designer. Fashion designer is just an instrument that God gave me to be able to do His work in different ways. I just had to be able to realize that and use it wisely and better.
You mentioned the confidence that, you know, when women wear your clothing, there's a confidence about them, or there's something about
Right.
them. Let's go back to you and your confidence. Can you talk about, have you always been confident as a fashion designer? And was there a balance, or, you know what I mean? Like, when did you find yourself, and when did you find that confidence in yourself to be like, no, I'm gonna like approach this, or I'm gonna like take control. Yeah, I'm gonna do fashion.
Okay. Wow, that's a really heavy question. To answer your question, I'm still to this day, I'm not confident with being a fashion designer. It's still to this day, I always question myself. I'm always like, I don't know if this sleeve is supposed to be here, or this is how we cut it, but we're just gonna do it and see how it works. The moment that I realized that fashion was just something that I needed to do, and I just had to go ahead and do it, regardless of what people were saying, was when my mom died. That's really how it was, and that was 5 years ago. I remember my mom was on her deathbed, and she couldn't speak. She couldn't even open her eyes. She was like that for 2 weeks. And she was the one she was my greatest teacher. She loved me regardless of who I was. And she was always the one that knew that I was a creative before I knew I was a creative. She knew that I was my most happiest when I'm helping her weave fans and mats and baskets to sell. So I always valued her and her opinions and what she had to say about me and what should I do. So I remember when we took my mom to the hospital, I got a phone call from this one fashion show in New Zealand. It's like, hey, and since then I've never shown up till then I've never shown a collection. I've just did little things and just posted on Facebook. I never said I'm a fashion designer, but I was invited, and they were like, "We want you to be the main event and to close the show." I was like, "Why would you want me to close the show? You've never seen my work. Like, there's bigger fashion designers in Samoa, like Mena, Cecilia, and all those big names that Samoans know. Why would you ask me to do that? Like, there's, and even when I went to the show, there was a Tongan designer. Her name was Bo. And she was much more much more well known and successful in the fashion industry than I was. So when I got that invitation, I was first scared, but I was excited, but I was very scared. So I remember going up to my mom. I knew that my mom wasn't speaking or wasn't opening her eyes, but I just held her hand and said, "Mom, so I got this really cool opportunity to show my collection, my very first collection, my fashion show in New Zealand. I just need to tell me if that's okay for me to do it. If I just need your blessing. And if it's okay with you, just squeeze my hand. You don't have to say anything or open your eyes." And she did. She squeezed my hand, and from that moment, I'm trying not to, think too much about her, else I'm just going to bawl my eyes out be ugly on camera. That was the moment I'd realized that that's what God wanted me to do. To be able to know that my mom was the one that always was like, "Don't care what anyone says, If that's what you want to do, then do it. Right. Who cares if people call you Afa Ah Loo? Who cares if your hands are flying around and when you want to be funny, you talk like a girl? Who cares about that? That's just how you are. That's how God gave you. That's how God made you. And that's just how it's going to be." The faster you realize that that's how you are, the faster you are going to be on your journey. So that's when I'd realized, what? This is what I'll do. That's the moment that I realized. And so my mom died the very next day, and Sunday, that was Friday. Then Sunday we buried my mom, and then the Monday I left for New Zealand. And since then, it has been a wild ride for me.
Just never looked back ever since, huh?
No, a lot has happened since 5 years ago. And I still feel her to this day everywhere I go. You know, I feel her presence with me every single... sorry. I'm just trying not to get there, you know? But yeah, it's just one of those things where I just have to remember, you know, where you came from and who brought you there. For me, I've always, looking back, I've always sat on my mom and parents, my mom and my dad's shoulder, and they've carried me through. And it's still to this day the same feeling that I get when I go to a fashion show and people talk about who I am and where I'm from and who inspires me. It's always a constant reminder that I came from nothing and there's still a lot of work to do and I still have to work hard at it because I'm not done yet, you know, and people have not seen the last of me. And there's so much more to it than just clothes and so much more to it than just me and you know, there's a reason for it. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I almost feel like it's relationships, yeah? It's like nurturing these relationships through fashion or through clothes or, you know. And shout out to our parents, you know, they're our biggest supporters and biggest cheerleaders.
Even on the other side of the veil, they still are.
Right.
You know, I always, I still feel them, you know, both of my parents. I still feel their presence and I still hear their voices telling me, get your moolie up and go get this. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's what it is.
So, just with the little success that you've had, I mean, not that it's little, but with the success that you've had, do you consider, what is your definition of success, and do you consider yourself successful?
Yes, to answer your question, yes, I consider myself successful. My definition of success is, like I said before, is being able to affect people and move people. If you've moved somebody to a different level of a better them, then I feel like you've successfully done your job. I might not be a successful designer as far as money goes. You know what I mean? I may not be selling my clothes in Nordstrom, even though I almost did, or worldwide. You know, I might not be successful that way, but I feel like I've done the true reason of what I'm doing. Like I said before, for me, it's about the people. And I've connected with so many people and I've learned about people and their stories and where they've come from and how they got to where they are. And I've been able to share my stories as well. So, and to be able just to see how people create and how creative they are. I feel like that's me winning, you know, even on Project Runway, because I got eliminated from the show. To me, when I got eliminated, I felt like I've done what I needed to do. And that's literally what I told my wife when I made that phone call that evening after I got eliminated, that I told her, you know what? I feel like I've done enough. I feel like I've done what I came here to do. And I feel like I've been able to tell my story and that people have been able to see who I am and my work, that's good enough for me. And still to this day, people still message me and say, oh my gosh, I still think that you should have not been eliminated on the show, that I loved you. We've not seen someone like you on the show, someone genuine and like would help people, blah, blah, blah. So for me, that's more than winning $250,000 on the show, even though it would have been really great. To me, that goes a long way than money will ever take you.
Man. And then just going back, sorry, I didn't mean to say that your success is little.
Oh, no,
What I mean by that is because you said earlier that there's a lot more that you have to do.
Yes.
And so that's what I mean.
I knew exactly what you were talking about. Don't worry.
For everyone out there, I'm sure somebody's going to comment below like, oh, he called him little success.
No, when you said that, I knew exactly where you were coming from.
But yeah, let's just throw that out there. Just let it be known that, Afa continues to have, bigger dreams and bigger goals to accomplish, and in that sense of accomplishing more, with what you've accomplished. So but another thing I wanted to ask you is, are there many Polynesian fashion designers, or are there any in your industry?
Samoan fashion designers that I know of, there are a few, but they're in Samoa. They're
So in the States, there's
no,
not too
not that I
many.
know
Oh,
of.
so you're the
I
basically a trailblazer,
well,
huh?
I'm the first Samoan to be on Project Runway,
Okay.
and that was when I first watched the show when I was, I don't know, 11 or 12 years old, or however long that was. I said to myself, I'm going to be on that show. I'm going to be the very first time I want to be on that show. And that's exactly how it happened. And I'm not being boastful. I'm just saying I had a dream and I went for it.
Right.
So I know a lot of Hawaiian designers. I know a few Tongan designers. But as far as like high fashion goes, the mainstream fashion, excuse me, I don't know. Maybe I know like a couple,
Yeah.
but I don't know a lot. Yeah, it's not something that is taught growing up in the islands that that's what you need to be. You know, it's either you want to be a rugby player, a doctor, a nurse, or a lawyer.
And that's why I wanted to interview you because, being in fashion, there aren't too many, Polynesians. And just like you said, you're the only Samoan on Project Runway. And so for, maybe those listening or those watching, they'd be like, hey, if Afa can do it, I can do it,
100%.
And so what advice would you give to our younger, Pacifica, younger generation of Pacificans, coming up that, advice that you would give with the knowledge that you have now for them coming up?
I mean that's something that I learned because I was a teacher. I went back and taught at the high school that I graduated from for 4 or 5 years. And the thing that I always say to my kids is feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's something that I've tried to live by, is who cares about what anyone's, is saying about you. As RuPaul would say, if they don't pay your bills, pay them no mind.
Right.
If they don't come over here, yes. If they don't feed you and your kids, put food on your table and a roof on your head, why do you even care about what they say? You determine your own success and your own journey and your own story. So what I would say to those young Pacifica kids who are trying to get into the fashion industry or anything really, just the faster you learn that what other people say wouldn't determine how you react to your own journey and your story, the better it is for you and the faster you get on your journey.
I can relate to that because, like I mentioned to you earlier, is like I've been doing this podcasting since February, or at least posting things since February.
Right.
But I had a whole other 8 months before that that I was just scared. It's just like just fear of whatever, you know what I mean?
Just
whether it was other people's
anyway.
comments. And so, I can understand. And, just in sharing your story, just kind of like with you, until your mom gave you her blessing, then you're just like, let's do it. You know what I mean? I just like continue to build the confidence. And even to this day too, I'm still kind of, building my confidence, you know, there's more than it was before, but it's still less than I have,
and that's the beauty of just being a human being. It's just there's always something to learn every day. I mean, I just have to teach myself every single day to be patient with my child and not throw her out the window. It's okay that she's screaming at me. God loves me and God loves his child, and that's why they gave this child to me. So that's okay. So it's like, maybe that's a really bad, but like for me, there's always a lesson to be learned every single day. You learn something new every day, and that's just how it is.
Sorry, this is just a random thought. When you're going through that with your child, do you ever think like, man, my dad, what he would do to me if I were you?
100%. And that's what I tell my wife. I was like, damn, if she was in the islands,
what my dad would do to me, or my mom would.
Yeah, she would get the biggest outside of her life. If if I'm telling her to stop doing it and then she throws a fit at me, I would never. In a million years growing up, I had never thrown a fit at my parents because I threw a fit and they threw a rock at my face.
Right.
It was just one of those things growing up. So it's
funny, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, but also a good lesson to learn going, it's maybe it wasn't how there's a better way of reacting to those people. I mean, to those situations, and a better way of de-escalating certain things.
Right.
Other than beating the life out of your child.
Can you talk about being invited to the palace in
Buckingham
England?
Palace?
Yeah, Buckingham Palace, and then what that experience was like for you, and then what Yeah, just what that whole experience. Like,
Right.
man, that's so crazy to be invited by the queen,
Right.
right?
I to me, like, to going back to like what, when you grow up, there's certain things that your parents want you to be, like a rugby player or a
Yeah.
football player, whatever it may be. I always wanted to represent Samoa in some sort of way. My friends were all rugby players, and they ended up being lawyers and all these different things. Like, man, I am not that smart, and I am not that physically able to go and play rugby. What should I do to be able to represent Samoa? Because I feel like that would be a really cool thing to say. Hey, I represented my country in some sort of way. So to be able to represent Samoa in the Commonwealth Fashion Exchange during London Fashion Week in Buckingham Palace in front of the whole entire royal family and fashion royalty like Naomi Campbell and Anna Wintour and all those people was just, I think that is my greatest achievement being in the fashion industry. People say, it's not Project Runway? I was like, no, it was definitely not Project Runway.
Being able to represent your people or someone,
Yes.
right? That's
Again,
so cool.
it's just, for me, it goes back to that. It was just a surreal moment, being able to walk within those walls and get treated by these guards and say they want my coat, and like people were handing you food on a gold platter, and then you walk on these red carpet and everything is gold, and everything has these big painting of queens and kings that you learned growing up and saw, and then meeting those people, meeting the queen and everybody. It was just wow. Like,
A Samoan kid, a kid from Samoa,
straight
right?
from Samoa. You know what I mean? I didn't even, not even Samoan kid that grew up in California or
Right.
Utah. No, a
Straight
kid
from the
straight from the
islands.
islands, and very island growing up. You know what I mean? It was just, for me, it was very surreal to be able to be in that moment and be amongst those people, and to be able to say, yeah, I talked to Anna Wintour and she said that my creation was actually really great. Yeah, I talked to the professor of that teaches fashion in the most prestigious fashion school in the whole entire world, and I asked him if I wanted to go into fashion school, and he said, you don't need fashion school, you're doing great on your own.
Wow.
Yes, that I did that. I
Those are
was
some
able
cool
to,
moments, right?
yes,
And
and those
experiences.
moments was something that I will forever treasure. It's something that, it's my legacy,
Right.
that my kids will be able to say, hey, my dad did this. He came from nothing. He did all of this growing up. He wanted to get to somewhere, and he had to work hard to do it. And I'm born here in America where all these different things are available to me. What is holding me back from getting to my dreams and getting there? So I hope that my people are inspired by it, or especially my kids, being able to look at their dad and say, hey, I think my dad was pretty cool. He did a lot of things that it wasn't done before. And he's, so I hope that I'll be able to have that legacy for myself and to be able to pass it on to the next generation.
Dang, that's
But
amazing.
yeah, being in the Buckingham Palace is just a whole different world. Like, you people are like, and then, when they serve you your food and you're like, what is in this? Did you say that's a snail? No, I'm okay. We don't eat snail in Samoa. Did you say that was a possum? No, ma'am, I don't eat possum. Do you have some like steak? So it was just like weird but beautiful, to stand in those corridors. And we were also in the throne room, where like the throne of the king and the queen were, Queen Victoria and all those queens and kings stood and sat. It was just really surreal for me. Like, yeah, and yeah, again, it's just a blessing from God,
Man,
Yeah,
that's cool that someone that somebody that I can relate to.
the biggest
You know what
fob
I mean? Yeah.
in the world.
That he was able to do that. And I'm glad that you touched on that, because of the success that you've had, other people hopefully will be inspired by it.
Yeah.
And then, with the success that you had, your kids will be able to be pushed even farther.
Yes.
Because you're, farther
Yeah.
ahead. And so
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I know, and it's just like, yeah, and all of that combined, I I hope that people don't think that they can't talk to me, or people think that they can't approach me and ask me certain questions about certain things. I'm still the island boy that run around back. If you come talk to me, then you'll know me. I'm not, even though I've been to those really cool places and I've had the success that I've had in the fashion industry, I'm still reminded of who I am and still easy to talk to. I'll be down and sit down with you and, just chat with you.
For example, he came on the Village Made podcast.
Yeah. Whatever.
Who are we? We ain't nobody, And so
no, I love what you guys are doing. Yeah, it's really great.
Really appreciate it. But and talking about success, with the success that you've had, what keeps you from being complacent, whether in fashion or in life?
I think going back to what I said before is knowing a purpose of what you're doing. You know what I mean? What is the purpose of what you're doing? And if the purpose has shifted, what then are you going to change to be able to shift what you're doing to be able to complete and get to the purpose of what you're doing? I think that's what really keeps me going and helps me and motivates me to do what I'm doing is what is it that I want to do next? And if I'm already there, then what? What is the next thing that I need to do? What is the purpose? There has to be a purpose. You can't just do things just because you're doing things. Everything has to have a purpose of what you're doing it, whether it be, success or your happiness or proving a point or whatever it is. There is a purpose of what you're doing, and you have to take those steps to get to that destination.
Right. And then can you mention, maybe if you have, can you think back on some experiences that you've had, whether in fashion or maybe as a dad or in life, that when you think back on it now is like, man, that's what made it worth it for me?
Mm-hmm. I think the most important thing for me to always, the one thing that I've always, now being a dad and being a married man, is to be able to provide for my family, and all those times where I offered my service for free to people and all those people. I remember when I first started fashion, someone asked me, "Do you know how to make a wedding dress?" I said, "Yes, I know how to make a wedding dress." Did I know how to make a wedding dress? Absolutely not. Have I made a dress since then? Before that moment? No. But I was like, yeah, I know how to make a wedding dress.
Right.
Yeah. So I would go home and, so all those little moments and all those experiences and all those heartaches that I've been able to go through, and all those hard lessons and easy lessons and whatever successes that I've had, that's what makes it worth it for me. I remember when I designed for the Miss World competition, when Afa went to the Miss World competition in China, viewed by billions of people. I talked with her and the organizer of the Miss World organization, Samoa Miss World, and said, "So what kind of dress do you want?" Said, we just want like a ball gown evening, not your typical Samoan dress with the print. I was like, okay, that's what's gonna happen. So that's what I did. So when the dress finally was revealed to the world, oh my goodness, I had so many hate mail come my way. Oh, people are mean. If you are watching this podcast and you're one of those people, the Lord will forgive you. Okay, and I forgive you. Thank you for all those hate messages and telling me that I suck. That really helped me grow. But I got so many messages like, I don't know who the hell you are. That's when I was just starting in fashion, right? That was right after I showed at Fiji Fashion Week. So really people knew me, but they didn't know me. So we don't know who the hell you are. They should have, they named all those well-known Samoan designers. They should have had these people design, what kind of dress is that? There's nothing Samoan on it, because there was nothing Samoan on it. It was just like a silver gown with like pearls that goes off the shoulder. No prints, no flowers, no nothing on it. They're like, it was like a glittery fabric. It was beautiful. But man, people had just tore me down. Like, just people I didn't know, you know?
Right.
And being in just like even what you're saying, just putting your work out there, it's scary for people and fashion is very subjective, you know? And I think with anything artistic, it's very subjective. People have different ways.
Right.
And the thing that people forget to remember is that people create differently. And just because you create with the color purple doesn't mean the color purple is ugly to me. I might not like the color purple, but it's just how you create. I create with the color black. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's what's make the world go round. It's just different ways of creating. And people are so quick to be like, well, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I don't know why you're a fashion designer. Who gave you permission to tell me that? I don't see you creating.
What have you done? Right?
Yes. And when you create, I don't come to you and tell you that's ugly. I just sit and say, well, that's very different. It might not be my way of doing it, but that's how you do it. And that's beautiful in their own eyes. It's beautiful. You know what I mean? So it was, yeah, that's just one of those things, those experiences that I'm like, well, damn, people say that I suck. Well, I guess I really do suck. So maybe I should just stop doing what I'm doing because I guess. But then at the end, for the finale, because Latafale has been the only beauty pageant contestant from the Pacific Island that has made it farther than anyone else. Yeah. So at least from Samoa that I know of. So for the finale, she wore another gown that I designed that's very Samoan. You could one look at it and like, yep, that's printing all over it. It's very Polynesian, you know, and everybody was so happy about it. But like, again, like why do you feel the need to tear someone down just because of how different they are and how different they create? Just God gave us different talent, different way of thinking, and different way of creating, and that's fine, you know. So.
Man, I guess you kind of answered that question. No, you can answer this, or you can say.
I don't know if I answered your question. I actually forgot the question.
Oh, no worries. We'll just move on to the next one, which is, what do you think we as Polynesians have to unlearn?
And
so I think you kind of, maybe you touched on it with like, you know, putting others down, but you can also answer in a different way, or
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's the first thing that Polynesians have to unlearn is you just talk too much, you know? Like, especially the negative. Nobody need no more negative around. There's already too much negativity going on in the world today. We don't need any more from you. The other thing that I think Polynesians need to learn, at least Samoans from my personal view, is just that it's okay to go outside of the box, you know?
Exactly.
It's okay for me to be a fashion designer and not be a rugby player. It's okay to think that a Samoan designer has created a full-on red carpet dress that has nothing Samoan on it. It's fine. It might, again, going back to what I just said, it might not be the way that we're used to, but I feel like that's how we grow, is if we push ourselves to do things that we don't normally do. Exactly. You know, think outside of the box, build your own damn box, and just do something different. Right. You know, it's okay to be different, and that's fine. And don't do things because it's cool, you know? Don't do things because it's trending, you know? Like all the fashion businesses that now have black models on their thing. All of a sudden, everybody has black model. Like, I know, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. You have to change. But like, why didn't you do that like 5 years ago?
Right. Why only now?
Why does it have to be this bad to be able to get to that point? So again, it's okay to be different. It's okay to go out and do things outside of the box. It's okay to go out of your norm and do things that doesn't seem normal to other people.
Yeah, we're blessed with, you know, the gifts and the talents that we have is more than just rugby or more than just football or, you know, the physical parts of the Polynesian, because we're just, you know, so manly. We play football.
Exactly.
Rugby,
oh my gosh.
You know, so
I just did a shoot for this plus size fashion show that we just did, and Ashley and them. Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, that thing was I was like, because to me, I work with a lot of all kinds of shapes and sizes. I was like, that is such a beautiful thing. So I reached out to Ashley and say, hey, I want to shoot with you guys. Can I shoot? Can I come in? Like, we'll just plan a shoot and shoot with it. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, would love to. But it was great to see all those women just like living their truth, and being okay with who they are, which is so weird that's something that is like seen as that's a problem, right, to have a body that big. But knowing that Polynesians are not typically stick figures, why is it not a normal already for us? Why is it not normal for us to be like, that's how normal Polynesians are built, and that's totally fine? Why isn't the world following us? Why isn't the fashion world following how we view our bodies and how we view others' bodies that are not the typical beauty? I mean, I get that that's how the fashion industry has put beauty and the way that you view beauty, but again, it's up to us to direct and to control our own narrative and our own stories. But like, oh my gosh, the reason why I brought that up is because at the end of this photo shoot, we were sitting and we were eating like some chicken sandwiches. And there's this man in his really nice Jeep Wrangler driving all over, showing off in his car. And he drives past us and says, "Excuse me." And then he drives like away from us and he goes, "I was expecting a pig over here."
Wow.
I was like, and I said, "Well, that was hella racist, sir." I was like, so that's how you view us. Just people that loves to eat and are big, seeing that all these women are proud of who they are, and because they were doing a shoot too, and all those models were very skinny, and like just how the beauty world sees beauty as it is. So, and then they saw us in the other corner doing our shoot with swimwear with women that are not like a size 0, size 2, and for him to say that, I was like, damn, that's how people really see how it is. So with everything that's going on in the world, I'm glad it's going on in the world, because it's about time for change. It's about time for people to stop putting other people in boxes and judging people by the way they look and the color of their skin and by their gender or what it is. Because trust me, I've had my fair share of people looking at me weird because I say I'm a fashion designer and I look like this and I wear sandals that are hella dirty. Even being on Project Runway, people are like, "So are you going to wear those sandals?" I was like, do you have a problem with it? Because that's what I wear all the time. And that's
I'm not going to change because of
no
TV or because of the show.
Exactly. So if you see the show, that's exactly how I am today. Like if you it's not like if someone watches the show, it's like, man, Alpha's really different on TV. No,
there's no difference.
If you see that person and you come with me, I'm literally the same person. Like I have not, and that's one of the things that I tell my wife that I always have to remind myself: it's just a TV show. Don't lose yourself. Go in there with the purpose, at the same time remembering who you are. So yeah,
that's great advice, not only for yourself for that TV show, but also for everyone else in our lives as we continue perfecting our crafts, the different crafts that we're in, whatever we're doing. Yeah,
it's beautiful. And just don't measure what's that one what do you call quote, that the biggest downfall of success is comparison. Something like that. I'm butchering it, but like, don't compare yourself to other podcasts that they've been doing it for so many,
right?
And they're not telling the stories that you're telling. You know what I mean? They're not telling the story of Polynesians and how you're doing it. No, it's just how you create, and that's beautiful. I love it.
And that's just going back to what you said, is us controlling the narrative.
Yes.
You in fashion and me in, telling our Polynesian stories. And that's what we are able to control. We don't have control over anything else.
Yeah.
And, so
we have control over ourselves and our stories and how we tell it.
Exactly.
Don't let anyone else tell that story for you.
Yeah. Well, I guess, man, finally, or the last question that I have for you is, what do we as Polynesians have to offer the world? And then also, can you mention what do Polynesians have to offer the fashion world? Now that you're in it.
Right.
And then for those that are coming up that want to be, fashion designers, what do we have to offer the fashion world, and what do we have to offer the world in general?
I think what Polynesians offer the world, and I guess it's similar to the fashion world, is
it could be the same.
I think for me is just compassion and culture. And it's weird because if you see how big fashion houses operate and what inspired them, it's inspired by other people's culture, whether it be Asian or Native American or like whatever it is, it's inspired by someone else's culture, So that's what we need to offer. I think it's time for us to tell our own story. And I think it's time for us to be able to say, I am creating something that is inspired by me and my people. I'm creating something that will benefit me and my people because that's ours. So to be able to, again, offer compassion and love, because you every Polynesian would know. Everybody here, especially here in Utah, I guess I'm actually never been, lived anywhere else in the world, but like in Utah, everybody's like, oh my gosh, I love Polynesians. I love you guys. You guys are the best. I love like going to your family feed and like you guys just are just people of love. Like they love that. So I think that's something that we still need to offer more and teach people. Don't be afraid of the conversation. Do those conversations behind closed doors, and don't be afraid of, again, controlling your narrative and telling your story, because you can't control other people. You can only control yours.
Amen. That's what we're trying to do,
Yep.
Man, again, thank you for just for me, that was really inspiring, that was really, especially this part of controlling our narrative, man, that's something that I, really want to do. And, I don't want somebody from Hollywood to be like, oh, let me go tell their story. I'm like, no, I'm going to tell my story because this is our people.
And that's why I love what you guys are doing. And I love your name, the name Village Made. And that's why I identified it when you said, yo, come on. I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. Like, because I grew up in a village.
In the village, exactly.
And I am exactly village made.
Yeah.
I was made by people in the village, and where I came from, I was raised by a village.
Yep.
So
it takes a village to raise a
yes,
child.
It really did.
You also, with you going to Buckingham Palace to represent all of your village, all of your people, you know what I mean? I think that was cool as well.
Yeah.
And then the other cool thing too is you were, going to school at BYU Hawaii. That's my village. You know what I mean? I was born and raised in Laie or, in Koko area. And so you kind of know how that is, you know what I mean? And so I think that's also, part of this. But to end, we'll just go ahead and get some rapid fire questions in.
Okay.
So the first, thing that comes to your mind, go ahead and share that with us.
Okay.
What takes up too much of your time?
Thinking.
What do you wish you knew more about?
Fashion.
What inspires you?
Women.
What are some of the things you had to unlearn?
Some of my culture.
We can go on for that with that for days.
We can go on forever for that.
What's your favorite book?
Oh my gosh. The first thing that came out of my mouth was the Book of Mormon.
Book of Mormon. There you go.
I don't read that much. The only book I do read is the Book of Mormon every night. So there you go. That is my answer.
What's special about the place you grew up?
Love. There's so much love in it.
What have you only recently formed an opinion about?
Politics.
What's the luckiest thing that's happened to you?
My wife and my child.
What song will guarantee to make you dance?
Happy by Pharrell Williams.
What are you most looking forward to in the next 10 years?
Growing my brand.
What could you give a 40-minute presentation on with no preparation?
Where I grew up.
The village, right?
The village.
What hobby would you get into if time and money weren't an issue?
Being a doula.
When people come to you for help, what do they usually need help with?
Sewing.
What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their life?
So.
What helps you live in the moment?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, and then these last two really are rapid fire, but which of your scars has the best story behind it?
This one.
What happened?
It was after the cyclone Afa that devastated the whole entire Samoa. I went to take the trash out and I slipped and there was a piece of glass and I just scored on it and it just ripped my hand from here to here.
I see that. Yeah, that's crazy. And then last question. If you could give back to your village, how or what would you do?
I would build a better education for, free education for my village, Offer free education, I guess. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I guess for the people who are listening to this, where can they find you, or where can they see your creations, or how can they get
Right.
see all these things? I guess.
Well, you can just follow me on Instagram, Afa Ah Loo. I had a website, then I took it down because it was ugly. I didn't like it, so I'm not working on it again. But that's how much it is. Or you can just email me at afa.aloo@gmail.com. So yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I really love your guys' work and what you guys are doing. It's amazing.
No, thank you for coming and sharing your story. Yeah. I'm sure, because I'm inspired, I'm sure other people will be inspired as well.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Village Made podcast, from my village to yours. We'll see you later.